Hi, I'm Judith Royal. I'm an archetypal astrologer, and I hope you'll join me for the next 20 minutes or so while I offer you a higher perception, another way to look at the events before us today in light of the rhythmic and the eternal cycles of the moon, the sun, and the planets, and the echoes I hear in their vibrations, or what some people call the field. And these echoes do appear to be from the past. However, these are orbiting and beautifully rhythmic cycles that are not linear, and for me, help lift me out of linear time into what I call vertical thinking, where I stop for a while and look up and hopefully extricate myself just a little bit from the mud I'm standing in so that I can remember to keep my head in the heavens at the same time. For quite a while, I've been talking about the astrological event that happened in mid-January of 2020, an occurrence that hasn't happened in 500 years. And now we are just slightly on the other side of that mountain because it was a meetup, an exact alignment of what I've been calling Sheriff Saturn, meaning the resonance with the need for organization, for step-by-step building of edifices, but also of organization in your own life that is full of integrity and that is built to last. And beside the Sheriff Saturn was the Lord of the Underworld, powerful Pluto, who says, well, I don't mind if Saturn says we need to build some new structures, that the old patriarchal forms are crumbling, they're just out of age. And Pluto says, however, we need to have something of a transformational change. We need to have something that requires all the people on earth to undergo the kind of metamorphosis that is true of a butterfly's transformation. In other words, we enter a cocoon and we enter it voluntarily, and we are in some darkness for some time. And then we begin to see the thinning of the veil, and we know we're going to emerge at some point, but we really don't know that we're going to look like the most beautiful of all insects, the most beautiful of creatures. And not only that, we are going to be able to fly. That's the sensation that none of us had known, that no caterpillar knew at all before going into that metamorphosis. And I've said before, it's a fascinating fact for me that I learned only a few years ago. I had a friend who has a butterfly garden, as it were. She really raises butterflies. And one day she came to see me and she brought some butterflies with her. And I was just tickled pink that they would sit right on my hand without moving, or on my shoulder, on the top of my head even. And the reason they would just alight there and stay is because they had just come out of the cocoon and their wings were still wet. And so they have to spend some time in the light in order for their wings to dry. And I think about how much that butterfly with the wet wings had to trust the kindness of my hand, the harmlessness of my intentions. Yet, having known much sorrow and death in my lifetime, I had to wonder. I couldn't help but think of the vulnerability of these beautiful creatures, many of whom will not land on a kind hand like mine. And I'm thinking of all the people now in March of 2020 around the world, and especially in third world countries who don't have access even to the kind of medical care we find in New York City. For them, there may not be a hand of kindness. So as I sit here enjoying my good health in the rather eerie quiet of my hometown, I can hear the echo of my grandmother Maggie's voice, that if she were here in this situation, she'd say something like, "Lord, have mercy." She would be praying for that most beautiful of spiritual gifts, mercy. Think about that 500-year ago epidemic of smallpox that wiped out 80% of the Aztec nation, millions and millions of people who had no access to a kind helping hand like we have now. It's true, this pandemic, this COVID-19 disease is without a doubt devastating. And I don't mean to minimize the deaths that we've had, but after all, if we look how far we have come in this 500 years, we have more than enough reason for hope, and we certainly have reason for admiration and gratitude for the scientists, the brilliant minds that are working on it as we speak, so that in some countries it need not be fatal. As I'm watching the synchronicities, those beautiful sparks that fall on our path, that are definitely a signal that the angels have a hand in our destiny. So a synchronicity that happened for me just before I was going to do this forecast was that my Sun magazine arrived with the April issue, and there was a poem reprinted there. It's from Kindness, Words Under the Words. It's a poem by Naomi Nye, and one stanza goes like this. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you, because he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. This coronavirus is certainly a tragic way for us to learn that we are global citizens, that we are now in an age of global communication and global economy, and that we are all indeed tied together in a mutual destiny. And I believe the vibes from Sheriff Saturn and powerful Pluto would have us ask the question about why in this incredible age of nanotechnology and warning after warning from really brilliant, hardworking scientists and epidemiologists and politicians too, have been telling us since 2003 that a pandemic is inevitable. It's not whether or not we'll have it, but only when. And they gave specific instructions, plans, and recommendations, very few of which we followed because of the lack of integrity in all of our systems and within ourselves. That share of Saturn in that astrological meetup in January has been warning us about for 2.5 years. And bringing this now into our personal, individual perspective, I've been thinking about how it happens that we simply don't communicate. I've noticed how I have not been listening. I mean, I watched the movie Contagion when it first came out in 2011, and then I guess I just sort of promptly forgot all about it. I didn't make any really meaningful inquiries. I probably fell into that blind spot that we all, I think, share, which is, it won't happen to me, that was far away and didn't have a personal threat. And now it's in my neighborhood, and I must stay at least 6 feet away from all my neighbors. I mean, I've been counseling and coaching people for decades about how to communicate more intimately and clearly. And now I've been the one out of sync because now we have to do this electronically. And I must confess that I was the one out of sync because I was expecting that this would be a problem. But I have to tell you, on a personal level, this has just been a wonderful opportunity. And why is that? Well, I'm older, and so my sons have felt, I hope not just obligated, but out of love. They've been checking in with me on FaceTime and on Zoom. I've even had the delight of my granddaughter calling and several of her college roommates, her university roommates, all joining in on a video chat. And now I see this is the manifestation of that web of mutuality, that World Wide Web, in which we can communicate instantly with anyone, almost anywhere. And that's just going to become better and better as time goes on. So think about that. Even though I'm geographically or in my space having to isolate, I'm less isolated socially than I was before this contagion started. And perhaps you started feeling some of this positive, uplifting way to perceive things, as I did when now Saturn, along with Warrior Mars, has moved into the air sign of Aquarius. So all of you air signs out there, and I'm one of them, that's going to be Gemini, Libra, and Aquarius. We have not been able to come up for a deep breath for really over a year. And now all of us, all those Capricorn planets in earth and water, you guys have been getting a lot of support. They're all going to now march into the air sign of Aquarius, the great humanitarian. Meaning the great humanitarian within all of us is waking up and is delighted to find that there are 7.8 billion of us, and we are all already connected in our collective consciousness, but we haven't been paying attention to that. It's been so easy for me to believe that my thoughts are not contagious. But you see now the metaphor in this virus, if it does have a silver lining, and I'm not trying to be a Pollyanna about this, but we can actually learn the lesson that not only are our thoughts things, they are vibrations that create our reality, but they are all joined together in our collective consciousness, which means that when I think something, that thought, especially if it is a loving thought, a caring and a kind thought, it is picked up and I know this is true, it is picked up by angels, by spirit, and it travels all around the globe, and it lands in any open mind. And I'm telling you this not to sound grandiose or for you to feel grandiose. It's rather just the reality now. And we can take advantage of that by realizing we are superheroes. We can at any moment and any day make such a difference in the world without leaving our own personal space. Instead of joining in the contagion of fearful thoughts, we can start our own contagion, certainly by thoughts of loving kindness, but also by paying attention to this 500-year echo that would say to us now, we have the deep longing for truth, and we are done with lying. We need to call it out in our own selves, and we need to make our voices heard on the global level as well. We are astrologically in a danger zone, and so we're also paying attention to where we're being lied to, and we know it, but we're just so numb with and frankly weary of all of these old patriarchal paradigms where lying is accepted as a part of so-called doing business. So what we are seeing on the world stage now is the crumbling of the patriarchy. And I'm going to challenge myself as well as you to once again commit to having a day without a lie. Again, I think that if you don't understand life, you're not watching enough movies, because those are the archetypes parading on a beautiful screen. So I'll pull out Jim Carrey's Liar, Liar, and I'll reread that brilliant book by Sam Harris, aptly titled Lying, because he brings up in my face that sadly mistrustful paradigm of that we've come to just take for granted, that, for example, business deals are also going to be based on what's in it for me, quid pro quo. So on the personal level, we ask ourselves, if I do a favor for a friend, a neighbor, or a stranger, am I still harboring the idea that they're going to owe me? Or am I of service because I know that everything I give, I am also receiving? And let's give this kindness also to ourselves. This is really a perfect opportunity I have found to do some things in my home that just make my life a little easier. It's easy for me to add to the challenge of not lying for a day, to also do something kind and loving for myself. And I'd like to invite you for April the 7th at about 7:35 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time to go outside and look up at one of the most beautiful full moons of this year. It is a Libra super full moon because she is closer to the earth. She's at perigee. And since Libra is all about relationships, as you look at that moon, select one person who's close to you in your life and forgive them. Imagine that they might be one of those people in the hospital on a ventilator, perhaps dying. And would it really be at all important to hold a grudge or resentment against them? I don't think so. And what could you not forgive if you understood it is simply a gift to yourself? So thanks for listening, and I'll be back real soon. You can always get in touch with me by email, judith@judithroyal.com. Bye for now.